Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking what's often referred to as India's Enron. We are digging into the country's absolute biggest corporate accounting fraud to see exactly how a top-tier IT firm managed to pull the wool over the entire world's eyes. You know, Satyam Computer Services was this blue-chip darling, a real symbol of India's booming digital power. But beneath that shiny surface, the whole thing was built on just an astonishing foundation of lies. All right, let's jump right in.
We're starting right at the edge of the cliff here. January 7, 2009. Satyam's founder and chairman, B. Ramalinga Raju, drops an absolute bombshell that just rocks global markets. He releases this wild confession letter to the board of directors and the Securities and Exchange Board of India. And in it, he flat out admits to manipulating the company's books and inflating profits for years. I mean, this wasn't some whispered rumor. This was a direct, written confession from the guy at the very top.
And the sheer scale of this deception? Over 7,000 crore rupees. It's a staggering number, right? This massive pile of fudged accounts literally shook India's $50 billion software industry to its core. At the time, the Indian IT sector really prided itself on sky-high corporate governance standards. Investors trusted these firms implicitly. So when that number dropped, it didn't just tank Satyam's stock. It sent a massive wave of panic about the integrity of the entire market.
Part 1. Anatomy of the fraud, illusion versus reality.
So the very heart of this fraud was a jaw-dropping gap between what they claimed and what actually existed. Satyam reported to the world, and to its investors, obviously, that it had 5,500 crore rupees just sitting in the bank. The actual reality? Try 500 crore. Yeah, over 90% of their reported cash was a complete and utter phantom. Now, you might be wondering, how do you even pull that off? Well, they built this illusion on multiple pillars. It wasn't just a simple, decimal point, accounting error. They systematically created fake cash balances using totally forged bank confirmations. They literally spun up fictitious invoices for clients that didn't even exist, just to artificially boost revenues. They hid their true liabilities. And perhaps the wildest part, they maintained thousands of ghost employees on the payroll. Just think about the audacity here for a second. This went way beyond just cooking the books. They were actively siphoning off funds. Imagine keeping 10,000 invisible, completely fake employees on your payroll. Through this unbelievable loophole, management illegally drained 20 crore rupees every single month, all disguised as salary payments. It's crazy. That is exactly how the fraud transitioned from just plumping up numbers to straight-up outright theft.
Part 2. The audit failure. The gatekeepers who looked away.
Now, because Satyam was listed on the New York Stock Exchange, the fallout from this went totally international. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission had to step in, and they investigated and ended up penalizing 5 India-based affiliates of PricewaterhouseCoopers. The SEC found massive, systemic quality control failures that somehow let this sprawling fraud go completely undetected.
What it boiled down to was a fundamental breakdown in basic professional skepticism. Look, in auditing, verifying cash is pretty much rule number 1. Yet the SEC found that these auditors routinely just handed over control of the delivery and receipt of cash confirmations right back to Satyam's management. They basically trusted fake bank statements handed to them by the criminals themselves and rarely bothered to question the integrity of what they were looking at.
Because of this, the PwC affiliates agreed to pay a massive $6 million penalty. And to put that into perspective, this was the largest penalty ever levied by the SEC on a foreign-based accounting firm at the time. They were banned from accepting new US-based clients for 6 months, and they were forced to completely overhaul their audit policies. The gatekeepers had totally failed, and the consequences were historic.
Part 3. The rescue. Rebuilding from the ashes. Okay, so after the bomb drops, the crisis unfolds at breakneck speed. January 7th, Raju confesses. 2 days later, he's in police custody. But by January 10th, the Indian government aggressively steps in, completely overrides the puppet board, and brings in heavyweight corporate veterans to take over. Their mission, basically impossible. They had 100 days to find a buyer and stabilize a sinking ship. But remarkably, by April 13th, Tech Mahindra swoops in as the winning bidder.
Tech Mahindra outbid the competition, acquiring a controlling stake for around 2,900 crore rupees. And this was a huge watershed moment. It pitchforked Tech Mahindra, which honestly was mostly a niche telecom player back then, straight into the big leagues. By saving Satyam, they preserved thousands of jobs, calmed down panicked global clients, and created this massive combined entity with 84,000 employees. It was truly a masterclass in crisis management.
Part 4. The legacy. Sweeping corporate governance reforms. So what happened next? Well, Indian corporate governance experienced a dramatic, practically overnight shift. Before Satyam, it was an era of puppet boards that just didn't ask the tough questions, founders running around with unchecked power, and audit firms getting dangerously comfortable with their clients over decades. But after the 2013 Companies Act, the whole landscape shifted toward actual accountability, mandating truly independent directors, setting up strict whistleblower protections, and forcing regular auditor rotation.
You can see how these new rules directly targeted the exact loopholes Raju exploited. First, audit firms are now capped at 2 consecutive 5-year terms. That ensures you always have fresh, skeptical eyes on the books. Second, independent directors must have absolutely zero financial or personal ties to the founders, which totally breaks that old puppet board dynamic. And third, they establish the National Financial Reporting Authority, a dedicated watchdog with real teeth and strong investigative powers.
To wrap up our explainer today, I want to leave you with a thought. The Satyam scandal absolutely revolutionized corporate law. It forced much-needed transparency into the system, which is great. But we really have to ask ourselves, can any regulatory framework truly eliminate human greed? We can build better guardrails, sure, and we can mandate independent checks, but at the end of the day, a company's integrity relies heavily on the ethics of the people running it. As you keep watching the corporate world evolve, keep the hard lessons of Satyam in the back of your mind. Thanks for joining me, and always keep questioning the numbers.